In this video, we're going to be breaking down the new patch low ELO tier list. These characters are going to be the best and worst in meta ranks of play. Characters that don't rely as much on coordination, but rather your own individual capability to carry a game, which you want if you want to climb. But while agent pick is super important in low ELO, getting great fundamentals is the fastest way to climb. And that's why over at SkillCapped, we created a fast track so that you can master the fundamentals in just under an hour and make the game stupid simple to climb. With our aim guide course, it will help you cheat your aim so that you can stop aiming like this and start aiming like this. We're actually so confident in our ability to help you climb, we offer you a money back guarantee, so if you don't climb, there's really nothing to lose. So what are you waiting for? If you're looking to climb at Valorant this act, be sure to check out SkillCapped. Other than that, let's get into our low ELO tier list. Now first up, we got to talk about the D tier, and at the very bottom, we have Harbor. There's nothing bad about Harbor as an individual character. In fact, he's really strong when played in a coordinated setting or with a second controller. But the reality of it is, you might not get either of those things in any of the games that you grind throughout the day. Harbor is a character that simply can't be a solo controller the majority of the time, and this is problematic when you're not really getting enough controllers to run duo on average in any game. You're lucky if you even get one. Now, occasionally the stars will align and someone will pick a controller first and you could lock Harbor after, or you could set this up in a duo, but most of the time I wouldn't really suggest this character for trying to solo carry yourself out of the low tiers of play. The next up, we do got to talk about a D tier character, KO. And KO's actually really strong in the meta, but Riot gave us some insight into the win rates of KO a while back, and we found that KO has a really low win rate in every rank, pretty much besides the top ranks of play, and it's still not even that great. And this seems weird for a character that sees so much pro play, but there's a couple of things that KO has working against him. Number one, KO is better in coordinated strategies just flat out. When you're trying to set things up with a team, you're getting value out of your ultimate with the team, you're playing off the information and delay that you get with your knife and your whole team's reacting to it, KO becomes a lot better. And in addition to that, having lineups and flashing for your team is super powerful on maps like Ascent, and a lot of KOs will not know how to do these lineups, and a lot of people will not know how to play off of a KO. And you combine that all with the fact that KO is just really hard to play and really hard to learn. I think that he is one of the harder characters to climb with. Doesn't mean you can't do it, doesn't mean you can't become a KO god, but it's not going to be the easiest time for you if you're picking him up for the first time. Now next up, we do got to talk about Yoru, last up in the D tier, a character that has a crazy high win rate in the high ranks of play, but in the low ranks of play, some of the lowest win rates possible. And Yoru is just flat out a very difficult character to play and pick up at all. He has a very high skill floor, meaning that if you try to pick him up for the first time, you try to learn this character, you try to just get baseline value compared to a lot of other agents, it's gonna be really hard to do so. While some characters get a lot of value automatically or with very little knowledge or skill, characters like Killjoy, Yoru's the exact opposite, where unless you do things proper and perfect and really know how to play your character, you're probably going to be doing worse than even a character that had no abilities at all, because you're going to be messing up your plays and dying a lot and just really nothing's going right for you. But Yoru is a character that if you commit to the grind and get really good with him, you can dominate even Radiant tier lobbies, where in Radiant, Yoru has some of the highest win rates according to Riot. But I've warned you, committing to learning Yoru is a long journey, so if you're not willing to fully commit to it, I wouldn't start picking him up at all. The next up, we got to talk about C tier picks, characters that can be good, but they're also characters that work a little bit better with synergy with your team. They are enabled a little bit more in duo instead of solo, and you're not going to have players playing off your utility nearly as much as you would like them to be. And the first character is Astra, a character that is super powerful just like Harbor, but you really need to play her in a dual controller setup, which we already talked about all the reasons why it's going to be hard to set that up consistently unless you're playing in a duo, trying to set it up each and every time. In addition to that, Astra is far better when players will play around your utility, trying to set up pull nades, trying to set up wall plays where you take sight. There's a lot of different things with Astra where the strategic side is super important, and everyone being on the same page and kind of looking out for your utility to play off of it is one of the most important things to get value as a team with Astra, and you're just not going to see that nearly as much. And if you're trying to hard carry a lobby as Astra, especially those games where it feels like you have to try to get value every single freaking round in order to carry, it can be really frustrating because it feels like Astra has to do much to try to set up her team, and it's up to them to try to execute on these situations that you're setting up for them. And if they're just not able to do so, it's pretty hard to take matters into your own hands. A similar character in this regard is the next up, Breach, a character that really wants to be enabling other people, especially duelists, to take space, get kills, pop off, and you can set up people all day every day, and most people will be able to execute onto that, and it can work pretty well. But a lot of the time, it feels like you are enabling people that you don't quite know how well they're going to do once you enable them. Whether you're flashing them in, setting for them, and I know every Breach player on the planet has both flash stunned and just help their team completely, only for their team to just all die, and it feels like you would much rather be the person going in yourself instead of being the person enabling. This doesn't mean that Breach is a bad character or weak or underpowered or anything like that, but he is going to be better if you have people that you can rely on your team. He's going to be better when you have people that understand how to play around your utility, and honestly, he's going to be better most of the time in like duo queue, using a utility for someone that is going to play perfectly off of it each and every time. Then the next character that we have for you in the C tier is Gekko, a character that is also super strong as an initiator, but there's a couple of things about Gekko that make him better in coordinated play than in ranked play, namely the fact that you want to often spend time routing to re-grab your abilities, trying to set up your engagements and getting value from that overall, because a lot of times you're going to want to reacquire your utility, re-execute under certain situations, but players are not really interested in the strategy behind what you're trying to do and what you're trying to set up. And even individually, Gekko is a character that enables his team far more than he does things himself. He can still do things himself, right? But he's better when you have more cohesion. He's better when you have more coordination. He's still a fine character overall, but he is going to have a bit of hard time in the low ranks of play, in my personal opinion. And last up is Sage, a character you might not expect to see all the way down here, but specifically Sage as of late has been fairly underpowered, seeing very little pick rate on many of the maps that she play, because really the only map she dominates right now is Icebox, which is out of the map pool. It's really just not a good map pool meta for her right now, unfortunately. Doesn't mean you can't get value out of her, but when you're playing Sage, you're sacrificing some really powerful Sentinel utility, namely Killjoy utility, unless you're doubling up, but then you're sacrificing initiators, or you're sacrificing a potential really powerful duelist. There's like a lot of give when you lock a Sage that right now I think that there's better options. Still, of course, if you could point click and you understand Sage very well, you could do just fine with her. Now we're still going to talk about Chamber, the eco god capable of popping off with your pistol, popping off with your operator, and locking down sites all by himself. Especially if you're really good mechanically and you understand the timing on Chamber, you can have some crazy high impact in a lot of different games. And Chamber gets to really cheat on eco in a way that most characters cannot cheat on eco, which if you're trying to be impactful at every single round, being able to break the rules and still have high impact in an eco round, turning around that your whole team saved or something like that, getting your team a huge boost in economy, these things are super impactful. Win a couple of eco rounds for your team, and all of a sudden the game that felt completely unwinnable is within your grasp. I think Chamber is one of the best at doing that. Now, the next character that we got to talk about in the B tier is Neon, a character that is the movement god, really great at just running it down, being disruptive, and getting a ton of freaking kills. A really great Neon can just kind of quote-unquote smurf a lobby where it's really hard for opponents that are not used to how a good Neon plays to play against a Neon, so you get extra value from that. Plus, you get to just have really high uptime, you get to be very proactive, which I think in general is good in ranked play, and Neon is sometimes just a complete powerhouse, plus you get to cheat on eco with your ultimate as well. Now, the only downside about Neon in the low ranks of play is she is far better if you have that setup, right? That guaranteed setup, that initiator setup, that breach stun, whatever the case may be, and you're not going to get that as reliably. It might not be perfect, it might not be set up properly for you, but at the very least, you can still time your engagements off your teammates' utility, and you could be the one to just play off of them instead of hoping that they play off of you, so that gets some extra pluses for Neon. Next up, we do got to talk about Brimstone, which is just a really solid, reliable pick all the time. He doesn't have a crazy amount of ability intricacy besides maybe lineups. His abilities get a lot of value just using them in the traditional way, smoking or mollying chokes to deny rushes, speeding up your team for faster takes, and just doing the controller job very consistently and well. And if you really learn the ins and outs of this character, especially lineups, you could be an absolute demon in clutches. But I understand that it's pretty tedious to learn these lineups. But that's why we recently published over 100 lineups over at SkillCapped for Brimstone that you can pick up and use very, very easily. And every single map is covered, even the ones not in rotation, because everyone loves it when a Brimstone and Swift play is using lineups on Icebox, right? But at the top of B tier, we do got to talk about Viper, which is super important as a character right now, especially with Breeze back in the map pool. Viper is needed on a lot of maps, and there's many maps where if you just don't have a Viper, you're really unlikely to win the game. Like, just automatically, agent select, you're already putting yourself at a huge disadvantage not having a Viper. So just picking Viper alone on these needed maps is already giving you a lot of win percentage points. And Viper, especially one that is walling correctly, is disciplined with the way they're playing post plant, is already going to get a crazy amount of value compared to most Vipers. But then also Viper ends up in a ton of clutches in a way that a lot of other characters don't have to be in these really high intense 1v2 situations where you can really have a crazy amount of impact consistently closing out these rounds for your team. And I do think that Viper is needed, powerful, and gives you ways to carry, so she's going to be at the top of B. Now moving on to A tier, and from A tier plus, these are characters that get a lot of automatic value against the mistakes that people are making at the low ranks, or they have the means to just completely deadlift a lobby by themselves and put their team in their backpack. The first character on the list is Cypher, a character that really, as you climb higher and higher, people get better at dealing with his utility, but the lower and lower you play in, the worse and worse people play into you. They don't clear your utility, they aren't disciplined in the way that they take sight around a Cypher, and you'll get a lot of free kills with Cypher, trips, and things like that. People walking into your trips without properly clearing and then just dying out of nowhere, and you're gonna get a lot of kills without even really needing to out-aim anybody. And in addition to that, Cypher's also a very, very good lurker. If you learn your lurk timing, you can actually use and move your trap wires to really cut off a complete part of a map and just really lock down the enemy's rotation paths. And if you learn how to properly use your cyber cages in order to take space on points on attack and use your cam in a similar way, you can find value with Cypher no matter what scenario you're in. Next up, we do got to talk about Skye, which is a character that did receive a pretty big nerf, but is still a really phenomenal character. Gathering information on a cooldown, being able to set up your team, being able to clear close angles, gathering that information, and enabling your team to take space. And you can just put the matter into your own hands and use your utility to set up your own plays as well. Well, Skye definitely wants competent teammates that are going to play properly around her utility. Because of all the information you gather and because of the ways that you can set up even your own plays, Skye just brings a ton of value to any game she's in. And because of the flexibility between all your information gathering abilities, your setups and flashes, and just the fact that you can set up yourself for duels, Skye's that all-in-one package that I would really suggest any player to pick up and learn and then slowly master. The next character that we got to talk about is actually Reyna, which is a character that you might be shocked to see so high up, but we all know how much impact you can have over a game if you are popping off as Reyna. Reyna gives you some of the highest ceilings with carry possible, and this is one of the biggest reasons why she's up here, is because while yes, you have to be consistently outplaying the enemy, you have to be aiming better, you have to be crisper, you have to be engaging better, there are some games that Reyna can carry that no other character can. There are some games where you're popping off on any character on the roster, but you can't do enough to carry. But if you're popping off with Reyna, you absolutely freaking can. And I'm not saying that you should be locking Reyna every single game and ignoring the fundamentals and the strategies of Valorant. But what I am saying is that if you're ever in a situation where maybe you're like a consistent, I don't know, diamond player, and you go on a giant lose streak, and you're all the way down in freaking platinum, and you're all the way down in gold, I certainly hope not, but maybe you are, you don't need to be strategizing your way back to where you belong. You need to be freaking clicking heads back to where you belong, okay? So lock the Reyna, have the highest impact in the lobby, but also Reyna is a bit more complex than people give her credit for, and because she's so reliant on gunplay, many people just mess up on a lot of the fundamentals that really make Reyna engagements perfect. And there's actually some special cheat text that you could use on Reyna to get yourself a lot of free kills in a way that other agents just couldn't possibly do. That's why we have our new Master in Minutes course to help you become that god tier Reyna as fast as possible. And the next character that I have for you is Fade, which is my pick for one of the best initiators in low tiers of play, mainly because she punishes a lot of the normal positions that people just stand in and get value in most games. You'll see a lot of people actually just holding angles, pushing up aggressively, never waiting, never being patient. And if I could describe Most metal tier ranks with like one phrase, it would be a lack of patience, right? Everyone's antsy. No one wants to wait the clock down. They want to seek out the kills. They want to get them. They want to push, whatever the case may be. But Fade punishes that really well. Someone pushes up trying to catch y'all off like a main or something like that on defense. They're pushing in. They're going to try to set up a flash play on you or something super aggressive. And you just freaking dog them out, kill them, and then they just look silly, right? Any person that is not playing towards the fundamentals of the game, they're not playing strategically smart in a way that they can clear utility and back away and get traded and things like that. Fade heavily punishes these people, and she's so reliable at doing it. So you're going to be able to get so much extra points just by denying people what they automatically want to do just instinctually. So it really makes Fade a very, very solid choice that I'd definitely recommend picking up. Now, the last character in the A tier and the very top of the list is Phoenix. And I've talked about Phoenix being a jack of all trades character. Just a character that has the tools to do what your team will not. You're trying to push onto an objective, but your controller fucked up the CT smoke. And then all of a sudden, there's a huge gap, and you don't know what to do. Well, as Phoenix, you have a lot of options, right? You could wall off yourself. You could potentially molly to deny them from pushing. You could flash yourself onto point. There's a lot of different variations that you can do for when your team don't do what they're supposed to do. Because Phoenix has all these diverse tools in his kit, he has something for every situation. And you never really need to rely on anybody, because if you need to, Phoenix can brute force his way onto a site all by himself. Wall off, molly off, flash through, get on site, get that plant down. You can do it all by yourself. And because Phoenix can, he gives you every tool that you could possibly need, where he really severely lacks in that coordinated play. In ranked play, he is like the perfect freaking character, although he is very hard to get great with, but he's definitely a character I would recommend if you just want to have a really consistently good time in every game you're playing and never feel like you're already going to lose based on whatever your agent select is or whatever your team composition is. Now, moving on to the S tier, I definitely got to talk about Sova. And Sova is just my pick for one of the best characters to play, period, mainly because he's always good. Whether your team is being very strategical, working together, playing off your contact, or whether you're just trying to fight in a clutch and just win like a 1v2, Sova's utility can get value both strategically and dynamically in the middle of the fight, trying to outplay someone, play around a box, throw a dart up the wall, swing them. There's a lot of different things that you can do to aid your duels themselves, and you can get a lot of solo carry impact just with your ult alone. Sova is that character that is never gonna be bad. He always has a way to find value, whether you're just winning more 1v1s and racking up them kills, whether you're enabling your duelists to get more space, or whether you're just helping the team strategically. There's always something you can get value in, and that means Sova is always good. And next up, we do got to talk about Jett, where a lot of people might be confused why Jett is so high even after her nerfs. But the thing is, she's still really strong. She's still a very, very powerful character. And I think that she should not be disregarded just because she got nerfed quite severely, because she still does stuff that no other character can do. And she does it very well, like opping very well, taking space onto site very well, and getting past utility in a way most other characters can. And Jett also gets extra value in the lower ranks of play for a lot of the same reasons that characters like Reyna do, where you can deadlift a lobby, being able to abuse things like knives, get tons and tons of eco kills, and pop off in a way that a lot of other characters can't. Every gun on eco is better in the hands of Jett, whether that's a sheriff, whether that's a marshal, whether that's a stinger. And even after her most recent nerf, she's still really dominating the competition. But there is a lot that goes into playing Jett, and it's really important to learn from the pros if you want to become an insane Jett right now. But luckily for you, we decided to spend a lot of time breaking down exactly how the best players, and it's all in our Jett course on SkillCapped, so check it out right now down below. The next character that we have for you in this video is Omen. And Omen is a top tier controller, a top tier agent, really impactful overall, because he fulfills the needs of his team, being that controller that sometimes you struggle to get. He is very good at helping your team take space onto point, and he's also very good at doing his job from various places on the map. So whether you're playing mid or you're playing defensive on one site, you can still smoke and help your team on a completely different site. And it always feels frustrating when your team is getting rushed and there's nothing you could do, and it just really feels like every time you're playing retake simulator, right? Omen gets to help his team and prevent that a lot of the time. In addition to that, on attack, you're incredibly good at lurking, cutting off enemy rotations, always timing the enemy team and making them play on their toes, whether they're rotating fast, you're cutting them off and killing them, forcing them to rotate slow, but then they're way too slow to help their team. You can always keep the opponents guessing, and Omen, with all of his utility, his teleports, his tricky nature to him, he can be very, very disruptive to the enemy team as well, where they're always afraid of you as Omen, and you're going to be putting yourself in a lot of clutches as well that you can really close out games. So Omen is a very, very great character, definitely one that I recommend picking up, and I always have, and one of the best characters to pick up regardless of the rank you're in. And the next character that we have for you is definitely Killjoy, a character that just gets so much value without you really needing to do that much at all, because her utility brings a huge barrier to get by for a lot of players. And if the opponents aren't using their utility to properly clear you, and they're not disciplined in the way that they deal with you, they're just gonna lose to you a lot for free. And Killjoy brings that all to the table. And there are also other things you can learn on top of that, like how to properly play off your own utility, how to have certain Killjoy molly setups, and how to perfectly use your ultimate that can really push you over the edge and get you even more value with just your utility alone. And that's not even with your gunplay. And really, a Killjoy that is a menace in clutches, and a Killjoy that actually has good mechanical skill. Not a person that runs the Killjoy because they don't feel like they have great mechanical skill, but someone that picks Killjoy intentionally, even though they're confident in their mechanical skill, is an absolute demon, and is one of the scariest people to go up against over and over again, because it feels like they're going to win every clutch, and you're just going to be very frustrated and lose a lot. Now, before we talk about the final character, Raze, I'm going to give an honorable mention to probably the lowest character on this list, which is actually Deadlock. I didn't put her on the list right now, but Deadlock is really underpowered, and we've talked about that in the regular tier list as well. But Deadlock is just not a character that I would really suggest anyone picking up, especially in the low ranks of play, because even though I think she's probably the worst agent in the game right now for coordinated play and the high ranks of play, she's even worse for low ranks of play right now because of the inconsistency in her abilities, the fact that most of her abilities require a certain amount of strategy. So yeah, honorable mention here, but I'm putting Deadlock at the very bottom of D tier, maybe even like an F tier or whatever. But last up, we do get to talk about Raze, which is like the perfect combination of everything we talked about. We talked about intrinsic power and intrinsic value, right, that Killjoy brings to the table. And then we talked about earned value, very difficult to access value, things like Yoru, where once you master them, you bring a lot of value to the table. Raze has both, where you get rewarded automatically with a ton of intrinsic value, a ton of automatic value because you have really great utility, and then you get rewarded immensely when you master the character. You master her movement, you master engages, you master how to use your utility, you master lineups. There's just so much layers to the character where you're always going to be bringing value no matter what type of player you are, no matter what stage of your Raze journey you're on. But then as you get better, your impact just scales extremely well. So Raze is my #1 pick for the character that you should be grinding, playing, dominating with. If you really want to climb in pretty much any rank, I really suggest Raze. Yes, she's not the easiest character to master, but she's 100% worthwhile, and she's the best duelist by far right now, so I would definitely recommend her. But if you want to master any of these agents very quickly, SkillCapped.com has the best guides that you could possibly find, breaking down exactly what the pros are doing with every character so that you can see exactly what you need to do in your games to have the highest impact. So what are you waiting for? Check it out right now in the links down below.